Quartz. It is a dirty word to some so-called watch enthusiasts. So-called because anyone who holds that view are, in fact, not true watch lovers. You cannot love something without appreciating, or at least acknowledging, all aspects of it. It's like saying you like rap but only listen to Eminem. So you may be wondering, what exactly is there to appreciate about quartz? After all, it doesn't have hundreds of intricate moving parts like its mechanical counterpart. Well, let's dig into it today by looking at one of the best quartz watches that money can buy. Not just any quartz, a Grand Seiko Quartz. And how does it compare to a Rolex in a similar price range? First, a bit of history. For the uninitiated, Seiko was the pioneer of the quartz movement. The same Seiko that later went on to create Grand Seiko, a child company that pushes the envelope of quartz movements even today. Just look at it. The Zaratsu polishing, also known as brother polishing, the attention to detail and the design are in every way on par with a Rolex. But more on that later. In 1969, Seiko unveiled the Seiko Astron, the first wristwatch of its kind to be driven by a quartz crystal. It also triggered what is now known as the infamous quartz crisis. The period in the 1970s and 1980s that pushed Swiss mechanical watchmaking to the brink of extinction. Within the first week, more than 100 units had been shifted. And get this, at a whopping 450,000 yen each. To put it into perspective, that is 15,000 Aussie dollars in today's money. Quartz was never meant to be cheap. It was the bleeding edge of technological innovation. But unfortunately, as time went on, the market equilibrium had shifted. This is not too dissimilar to what Rolex is doing today to artificially inflate prices by limiting supply. Many manufacturers started flooding the market with cheaper quartz watches, which started to solidify the idea that quartz movements are less artisan than their mechanical counterparts. This is fake news. The watch you are looking at is evidence of just that. This is the Grand Seiko SBGX293. It costs about 6,000 Aussie dollars, which puts it in a similar price range to an entry-level Rolex like this Oyster Perpetual. Before we even talk about the movement, you can already see that quartz watches can be in every way as artisan as a mechanical one. In fact, I would argue that it goes beyond in many aspects. Grand Seiko style, with its highly polished, clearly defined ridges where plane meets plane, is only achievable through Zaratsu polishing and the expert skills of the craftsmen who mastered its application. Zaratsu polishing was born when Japanese craftsmen started using German machinery with the words Geber and Salers on it. Zaratsu derived from the word Salers. Geber is a shorthand for brother in German. In other words, brother polishing. Doesn't the name just inspire you to give your brother a hand? Brother polishing is not just about the tools but encompasses the art and mastery of craftsmanship that is so deeply rooted in Japanese culture. As much training and sacrifice is required to polish a Grand Seiko as it does to forge a samurai sword. Each watch, every single one of them, are hand-finished by an expert. An expert who has dedicated at least 3 years of their lives to master the art of polishing his brothers. Compare this to the Rolex, it is like you've forgotten to put on your glasses. Sure, some surfaces like the bezel are hand-polished too, but it is obvious Grand Seiko can do this better. What about the movement then? Surely, this is where the Oyster Perpetual shines with its in-house 31-32 movement. Boasting a ±2 seconds a day precision. Mighty impressive for such a complicated piece of machinery. But unfortunately for Rolex, the Grand Seiko sports a caliber 9F. This is the best quartz movement money can buy. It has a precision of ±10 seconds a year. You heard that right, a year. Not a month. Cheaper quartz are much like mechanical watches, in that fluctuations in the environment can affect its accuracy. That's why Grand Seiko has spent years perfecting the technology. The first step was the enhancement of other aspects of a watch's performance, such as resistance to temperature, humidity, and shock. Further development of high-performance quartz oscillators was undertaken, including an aging process to ensure their long-term reliability. This particular model is also anti-magnetic after casing. No need to worry about things like balance springs in mechanical watches. The only competition in the Rolex lineup is the Milgauss, but that is almost twice as much as this Grand Seiko. And there is more. The movement is designed with extra torque so that larger, more impressive hands can be used. There is also a special system that makes sure the ticking seconds hand is utterly stable as it moves, which prevents that wobble you see from cheaper quartz movements. There is also the bracelet. Just like the case, it is finished with brother polishing. The links are not squared off like the Rolex. Each segment is slightly lofted, which molds nicely around your wrists. The clasp is milled with precision and feels extra secure with its double trigger release. Even with all of this, the SBGX293 still manages 3 years of battery life. This is around the same time the Oyster Perpetual requires a service. It is easy to discredit quartz movements because in principle, the design is simple compared to mechanical watches. But you see, complexity is not always better, especially if it is needlessly so. Perhaps it is best that we end on a quote from the founder of Seiko himself, Kentaro Hattori. A quote that encompasses their spirit to constantly strive for improvement and to best their competition.
この俺はいずれホカゲの名を受け継いで、先代のどのホカゲをも超えてやるんだ。だってばよ。
Thank you so much for watching this video. If you've enjoyed it, please consider giving it a like and subscribing to the channel.